All right, good morning, everyone. Let's get started. Thank you for being with us here today. My name is Brian McGraw. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect with AWS, and welcome to our Public Sector Summit this year. Let me remind you just of a few things. The exit locations, in case you need to leave the room. Restrooms are out across the hallway. If you would, please silence your cell phones, just so we can have a good experience for everyone. And in the app, just a reminder that we'd like for you to complete the survey when we're all done. So with that, let me hand off to Andrew Defoe, who's going to be talking with our rest of our panel here about WorkSpaces.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Brian. So just to introduce myself, I'm Andrew Defoe. I'm a Technical Business Development Manager with Amazon Web Services Worldwide Public Sector, focusing on our end-user computing services. And the session today is about using Amazon WorkSpaces to support computing intensive curricula at a distance. So I'll let Brian and Eric introduce themselves.
Sure. So I'm Brian Lewis. I'm an Assistant Dean and IT Area Lecturer at the McIntyre School of Commerce at the University of Virginia.
And my name is Eric Razout, and I didn't turn my mic down.
My name is Eric Razout, and I'm the Associate Director of Client Services at the McIntyre School of Commerce.
Great, and so for the next few minutes, kind of our agenda here today is for me to provide you with a brief overview of our end-user computing services, particularly Amazon WorkSpaces, and talk about some use cases in education, primarily looking at computer labs and thinking about different opportunities and benefits of moving computer labs to the cloud. And then I'll turn it over to Brian and Eric to walk through their story with some of their experiences, problems they were facing, and how Amazon and Amazon Web Workspaces help meet some of their requirements. So with that, just to kind of talk about the overall kind of services portfolio and solutions that we have in the end-user computing space, we'll spend most of today talking about Amazon WorkSpaces. Amazon WorkSpaces is a secure managed cloud desktop running Windows or Linux that you can provision for users, whether that's students, faculty, researchers, any users in your organization. Think about cloud desktops to meet their needs. Amazon AppStream 2.0 is a secure managed streaming service where you can deliver Windows-based applications to either a browser or a native client application. Some different use cases there around computer labs, around high compute, GIS, engineering, 3D applications being delivered to any device, anywhere, anytime. Amazon WorkLink, which is our newest service in the family, launched in January of this year. WorkLink allows you to access secure internal websites. Those can be websites running on premises. Those can also be websites running in AWS from a mobile device without any additional resources. And then lastly, Amazon WorkDocs, which is our secure file share, collaboration, and content management service that provides you with secure access to data and facilitates collaboration and also supports extensible APIs. But today we'll spend most of our time talking about Amazon WorkSpaces. So a few years ago, as we kind of got into this space, and since then we've worked with literally tens of thousands of customers who today serve hundreds of thousands of end users daily with end user computing workloads, including applications, including desktops in this service family. And really, this really is true across all major verticals and segments. So life sciences, financial services, and of course in public sector, government institutions, higher education, K through 12, all of our customers are taking advantage of end user computing services to solve for a variety of use cases, which we'll get into. The key thing here to think about with these customers, certainly they're the existing kind of life cycle refresh scenarios. Hey, I've got some VDI, I've got some desktops I want to think about utilizing in the cloud. But a lot of our customers will start with a very simple kind of greenfield workload. I've got something new that I want to do. Maybe it's centered around a workload that I'm already moving to AWS and I simply want to move the desktop and the endpoint close to that. Maybe it's thinking about research, maybe it's thinking about new curricula that you're looking at developing and introducing to your students. But you really want to think about opportunities in your environment to start at any size. We have customers that will start with one desktop, customers that would be thinking about tens of thousands of desktops. And that's really the magic of AWS and the cloud, is you can get started on your terms. All these services, of course, are built around a pay-as-you-go model, no long-term commitment. So you can think about getting started with as little as a single user to meet your needs. So there's definitely opportunities, and even our largest customers that today run tens of thousands of desktops, in many cases started with a very small project. So our mission with end user computing services is pretty simple. It's really about giving users anywhere, anytime access to applications and data on the device of their choice, or it could be your choice. And while doing that, we also want to help IT maintain data security, reduce complexity, and improve user productivity. And we'll talk about various ways that we do that. So with Amazon WorkSpaces, which is again is our managed cloud desktop service, as I mentioned, it is available in a pay-as-you-go model. We offer monthly, hourly pricing models per user. You can change the user configuration, and as you go, you can upgrade, you can downgrade, vertically scaling, horizontal scaling. Simple to deploy and manage. We offer console, API-driven. A lot of customers will integrate this into their learning management systems and systems of record. So the process of deploying a desktop to their student or to their end user can be as simple as enrolling them in a class. And so we want to help our customers think about that level of sophistication and integration to their systems of record. And of course, it is scalable. We support 7 different bundle types and configurations. And you'll learn from Brian and Eric about they had some very specific technical needs that required some higher-end compute types to meet their needs around analytics applications. And so you think about WorkSpaces, we do support Windows as well as Linux-based desktop environments. We know most of our customers in this space today utilize Windows, but we do offer alternatives which are particularly interesting around application development, especially if that application development is happening on AWS. And some different use cases for WorkSpaces in education. From a digital transformation perspective, certainly we see opportunities to think about replacing traditional VDI solutions running on premises. But we also see opportunities, especially because of the global reach of Amazon, to support a global user community. So increasingly we see higher education institutions collaborating with other universities. They may be hiring temporary or full-time staff that may be located in other locales. And so certainly the ability to provision a desktop for that user in their location with just a few clicks is something they obviously weren't able to do in the past. Certainly when you think about data and compliance and the ability to protect certain types of data those users may be interacting with, becomes much more important to think about where those desktops are located and how you're securing that experience. We also see customers thinking about WorkSpaces and cloud when it comes to your bring your own device policies. We know most students bring 2 or 3 different devices to campus, and the same is true for end users, faculty, staff, researchers. They want to be able to utilize the devices they're most productive with, and WorkSpaces is certainly a solution that can help you enable bring your own device in a very easy fashion. And then I think the use case which we'll get into today is really about student desktops. How do you facilitate a learning kind of platform for your students that could be involved or enrolled in a course or a degree program, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about that. I don't want to overlook the project-based opportunities for utilizing WorkSpaces in education. And so by project-based, I mean, potentially short-term or limited in duration. You have the ability to take advantage of the scale and the agility of AWS to spin up desktops for a few months, for a week. It could be something that's very short-term and very much based around a project or a budget that you've identified. And so some call-outs here would certainly be research. We see increasingly customers looking at WorkSpaces and cloud desktops to facilitate endpoints for researchers that may be working with data sets and systems that are already in the cloud. And we also see this for test and dev environments. And so the ability to think about WorkSpaces as secondary desktops that a user can log into. They can access sensitive data potentially, data that's secured and isolated in a cloud data enclave or data hotel as they call it. But the idea here is that you can think about WorkSpaces to solve a particular need, and that need can definitely be short-lived. Again, because of the pay-as-you-go model for AWS, you can turn on a desktop for a month, turn it off when you don't need it anymore, and think about that for a variety of different types of use cases that are more kind of project-based in your environment. And then from a security and compliance perspective, security obviously is job zero for AWS, but we do offer our desktops in commercial as well as our GovCloud region in GovCloud West. So if you're thinking about regulated data, obviously most higher education institutions are not strangers to regulated data. That may be FERPA, it may be HIPAA, it may be ITAR. So whether it's research-based or data that these students or researchers or faculty are accessing, you can think about the security and compliance posture of the cloud extending all the way to the desktop to be able to meet your requirements and secure those workloads. And so think about the workload that you're moving to the cloud, think about the desktop as a way to secure that end to end, and think about being able to do that anywhere in the world to any user. All the user gets is a stream of pixels that are encrypted. Everything stays centralized in either your data center or in the cloud, and it's a great way to extend and make your end users productive regardless of where they're located. And so from a specific use case, which is really around computer labs, we see a lot of our higher education customers thinking specifically about computer labs and solving for those traditional challenges related to scaling computer labs and offering them with especially higher end compute requirements, memory, CPU, GPU. How does WorkSpaces potentially help solve that? And so here are some of the reasons why our customers are thinking about AWS and WorkSpaces for moving labs and lab environments to the cloud. And so from a student perspective, certainly their objective is to get the best learning experience they possibly can. Students are hungry for real-world learning scenarios. When they work with applications, when they work with data, they really want to prepare themselves for the workforce and for their careers. And so that's really key on their mind. They want to be able to do that with, of course, their own devices because they're going to be most productive on the devices that they bring. They want to be able to utilize their files, so cloud storage, files they bring to the environment, and of course they want to be able to do this anytime, anywhere. It's difficult these days to convince a student to force them into a traditional computer lab space, especially if those students are accessing resources and taking classes from a distance. And so it's really important for students to have anywhere, anytime access to the applications and data that are part of their coursework and curriculum. From an educator's perspective, it's really about scenarios of responding to market forces, directives, and so this can be scenarios where educators are being asked to provide more science, technology, engineering coursework, which could extend into things like business analytics, so you'll learn from Eric and Brian on that. It could be about competition. How do you provide the best learning experience for your students, give them the most enriched learning experience possible? It could be about the traditional challenges of computer labs on campus. Campuses are continually pressed for how do you manage and make the best use of real estate and physical space on campus. Is a computer lab being the most effective way to utilize that space? Can you take any classroom or any space on campus and turn it into a computer lab by virtualizing and digitizing your computer labs? And of course, in the classroom, instructors that are having to spend less time helping their students install an application, manage a license key, and deal with all the different disparate types of devices that students are working with. The less time that happens, the more time instructors are teaching students instead of playing IT support roles, which is a good thing. And then from an IT administrator's perspective, certainly it's about keeping up with changing requirements. Those things can happen very fast and increasingly so. Whether it's system requirements, new applications that instructors want to be able to bring to their students. Educators want to innovate, and IT needs the opportunity to keep up with that and provide the right IT and technology platform. Something as simple as being able to manage class schedules, lab capacity, can be increasingly difficult when you have all this demand for lab space and different applications. It becomes much more easy to achieve when you have the ability to offer a cloud service that provides anytime, anywhere access. And obviously, we want to be able to do all these things while making sure we're adhering to the compliance and security standards that you have to adhere to as an educator. And so really, these are the key reasons why we see our customers thinking about AWS, thinking about WorkSpaces, and our other end-user computing services to address those computer lab use cases. And so, in summary, the cloud really has the opportunity to transform end-user computing, and especially so in education. Whether it's anytime, anywhere access for students, faculty, staff, researchers. What we're really trying to do at the end of the day is really improve the outcomes. Whether that's improved innovation, collaboration with students, improved student performance, real-world learning scenarios that we're unlocking for our end users. And from an IT perspective, it's really about maintaining control, centralizing data, centralizing application licenses, centralizing provisioning of those resources. And at the end of the day, when we talk about simplifying IT operations, we also don't want to lose sight of the existing systems that our customers have, whether that's internal systems, Active Directory, other systems of truth and record in your environment. We want to have you thinking about WorkSpaces and our end-user computing services as extensions of your existing technology and essentially providing a supercharged, agile way of delivering endpoints to your users across all many different types of use cases. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Brian to talk about UVA, McIntyre School of Commerce, and their experience with AWS and WorkSpaces.
I appreciate it, Andrew.
Thanks, Brian.
So most of you have probably heard of the University of Virginia. We tend to win national championships every now and then. The McIntyre School is the undergraduate business school at UVA. So we have about 700 students. Those are third and fourth year students at a non-Jeffersonian university. Those would be juniors and seniors, but in Jefferson land, they're third and fourth years. We're one of the world's leading business schools. We were founded in 1921, so we're coming up on our 100-year anniversary here shortly. In addition to those third and fourth years in the undergraduate BS in Commerce curriculum, we have 5 master's programs. Those are one-year master's programs totaling about 350 students. And we are very highly ranked. We were ranked Business School of the Year. We have some McIntyre alumni in the room, I think, so they can yell when that happens. And one of our master's program was just ranked number 2 worldwide. And so we have a high bar at McIntyre. So we were challenged by the governor of Virginia back in 2016 to incorporate more skills in data analytics and cybersecurity. We took that challenge to heart at McIntyre, and we have integrated data analytics throughout all 5 of our undergraduate concentrations, as well as throughout our master's degrees. In addition, we launched a MS in Business Analytics degree out of Northern Virginia, right across the street in Roslyn, as a direct response to the governor's call to educate more people with these skill sets. So with this challenge, we need to increase hands-on usage of software packages. We need computer labs again. So there was a big push in higher ed for the elimination of computer labs back in the early 2000s. We never took that bait. We never removed all of our labs from our spaces. But this challenge has caused us to expand our existing labs and has overwhelmed our capacity, both because we don't have the capacity in Charlottesville and because we're running programs out of Roslyn here in Northern Virginia quite a bit, and we physically don't have computer labs up here. So there's 2 parts driving this. One is that we need more seats to teach the software. The second part is that the machines can't be old. We're running huge data sets here, and we need to do massive big data calculations. And so student projects can't take weeks and weeks. They need to be done in a factor of hours. So we began exploring alternatives to just physical labs. We've had physical labs on a 4-year refresh cycle for quite a long time, but we started exploring virtual options once again. So the solutions, as they were, the faculty pushed some of these pretty hard. They wanted students to install software locally. In an undergraduate curriculum, this is possible. It's not ideal. However, most of our students now are carrying Macs through the door. And so a lot of these analytical packages only run on PC, which creates some interesting challenges. Faculty also wanted to go back to 2002 and start handing out pre-imaged laptops like we used to do in the early 2000s. Also not a great solution. Most people have their own devices now, and they don't particularly like carrying 2 laptops and paying an extra $2,000 for a piece of hardware. We looked into our centralized VMware environment at UVA called the Hive. The lack of customization options basically drove us away from that. Our software packages are designed they're very expensive and they're designed for small numbers of users, and we weren't able to get the customization we needed. And we actually looked at Microsoft. We actually deployed a desktop as a service solution. Microsoft told us the entire time not to do this and to explore other options. And we found out very quickly why, because it failed fairly dramatically within a few months of testing. So we actually Eric and I learned about WorkSpaces at a 2016 EDUCAUSE presentation from the University of Maryland University College, describing how they're using WorkSpaces with tens of thousands of students. And that opened our eyes to the possibilities. We liked it because it's platform agnostic. The students can use it on their Mac natively, on their PC, on their iPad, on their Android phone. Whatever they want to use WorkSpaces on, they can use it. We do a lot of things well at UVA. One of them that we might not do as well is providing 5 nines of uptime, especially if we are providing services to people outside of Charlottesville. And so a cloud-based solution was very attractive to us. In addition, we wanted a consistent platform. It's unfair to the students to have them installing this on hardware from different years because they have a different experience. A student could run a big data calculation that might take 15 hours on a 3-year-old PC, and a new PC would do it in 3. And that's very unfair to our students. So we wanted to make sure they had a consistent computing software hardware package. So I'm going to turn it over to Eric, who's going to talk about what we actually did to implement the solution.
Thank you. So we made the decision to move forward with WorkSpaces, and as may not surprise you, we decided to start off with a pilot. So about a year and a half ago, in the spring 2018 semester, we found one of our faculty members who was willing to work with us on a little experiment. You know, faculty like to research, they like to try new things. So we gave a small group of on-site residential students, both undergrads and graduate students, access to a limited WorkSpaces installation. This was a WorkSpaces image that had just a few very specialized analytic-focused applications: Tableau, RapidMiner, R and RStudio, and I think SPSS. This usage was entirely optional. All of these applications were available in our on-site computer labs. And again, these are residential students. These are students that are in our building every single day. These are students, to be honest, that have 24/7 access to our building and our computer labs. They can swipe in anytime they like. So this was not something they were required to use. This was something that was a bonus. Hey, you can come to the computer lab and complete your assignments, but maybe you want to sit at home on your couch in your pajamas and complete your assignments. You don't have to install any software other than the very small WorkSpaces client, connect to our WorkSpaces image. You'll have the applications that you need. So at the end of the semester, we looked at the data. And so the first thing we looked at was Amazon's own usage data on WorkSpaces. We found that 95% of these students had used WorkSpaces for at least 5 hours throughout the semester. So almost everybody at least dipped their toe in and tried it out. And so we asked them a couple of questions. And the first one is, which did you prefer? Did you prefer using the computer lab to complete your assignments? Did you prefer using WorkSpaces? And what we saw is that a little over half were telling us that they still preferred using the computer lab. Almost everybody tried WorkSpaces. We had very few technical challenges. Everybody was able to get in, and again, the client installation is very simple. So we didn't see any technical difficulties from that end. But we still saw about, over half of them preferred the computer lab. So we dug into that with a couple follow-up questions and found that one of the advantages to the computer labs that WorkSpaces simply couldn't match was screen real estate. Our physical computer labs have at least a single 21-inch LCD on every workstation. About a third of them have dual 21-inch screens. That's if you're doing analytic work, if you're doing stuff in Tableau, if you've got a huge Excel spreadsheet open and you're bringing data over into SPSS, using two 21-inch LCDs is a lot easier than using your laptop's single 12-inch internal screen. But we also asked our students about the application base, and we asked them, would your WorkSpaces usage increase if the service included additional software applications? And over 85% of us told us that it was either likely or extremely likely. I'm not sure why my largest pie chart here, my slice is missing its label, but I promise you that's the likely slice. Over 85% of us told us that they would make poor pie charts. They told us that they would be likely or extremely likely to use WorkSpaces more if it included additional software applications. And so this pilot and these surveys told us two things. So number one, it told us that for residential students, right now, WorkSpaces wasn't necessarily going to be a complete replacement for the computer labs. We couldn't go in and just instantly start ripping out all of our hardware. We might think about in the future, do we want to use a thin client that runs nothing but WorkSpaces but is still connected to two nice large monitors? Maybe. But the second thing it told us is that if we really wanted to use this in production, we needed to think about it as a full-fledged computer lab PC replacement. So not just the analytic applications they needed, but it needs PowerPoint, so they can put that stuff on a slide deck for presentation in class. And it needs Word, and it needs Excel, and maybe it needs some file management and some text editing utilities, some simple things that probably everybody is running on their own client hardware, but it's easier to have it all in one place. So Brian mentioned our Master's in Business Analytics program. We launched this program last August. We're still in the inaugural class. This is a partnership with the Darden School of Business at UVA. It's housed, in Darden's facility in Roslyn. And this is a hybrid program where students are taking classes online, and then they also have some in-person classes. Most of those in-person classes are at the Darden facility in Roslyn. They only come down to Charlottesville for 8 class days throughout the year of the program. So they virtually have no access to our physical computer labs. I mean, if they want to drive down to Charlottesville, they are welcome to use our labs just like all of our students are. But this program is gathering students that live and work in the DC metro area, not super convenient to get in the car and drive 2 hours to Charlottesville when you need to complete a homework assignment. So we looked at how could we provision a virtual computer lab for these students. And again, WorkSpaces was the solution for this. The curriculum was being developed last summer, again, brand new program, so the curriculum was being developed at the same time as we were building these workspace images. But the faculty were pretty insistent that these students were going to need some substantial horsepower on these workspaces. Their students are working with big data sets. They're using Tableau, they're using RStudio, they're using Oracle Crystal Ball and SPSS and SAS. This needs to be something that's relatively beefy so students can get their work done. And again, building on what we learned in the pilot, we dumped every application that we could think of into this workspace image. The idea was that I don't think any of our students are doing this, but maybe you're running it on a Chromebook and you don't have a local installation of Microsoft Office, or you don't have a text editor, or you don't have a file manager. We basically put every application they could use throughout the 12 months of this program into the workspace. Unlike with our pilot, this wasn't a bonus. This is required for them to use. This program doesn't really work without some kind of virtualized option. So again, new program. We're trying to develop workspaces. One of the biggest decisions we have to make is the running mode. Amazon offers two options. You can pay by the hour, or you can pay monthly in sort of an all-you-can-eat scenario where it doesn't matter how many hours you use. A new program doesn't have any existing usage data. Are these students going to use workspaces for 5 hours a month? Are they going to use it for 100 hours a month? We had to make some educated guesses, but we really don't have the data to fall back on to see, hey, what's going to happen here? Again, the faculty were pretty insistent that these had to be high-powered workstations, and so we made the decision to go with the power hardware bundle in WorkSpaces, which includes 4 virtual CPUs and 16 gigs of RAM. We went back and forth on this with the faculty a little bit, but they felt that that was the right balance between price and performance. So on that hardware bundle, the break-even point is 89 hours a month. If your users are using their workspaces more than 89 hours per month, you should just pay for the always-on running mode. It doesn't matter at that point. If you're going to use less than 89 hours per month, you want to go to auto stop, where you disconnect the users after 1 hour of idle time. You sort of stop the meter, and then the next time they connect to workspaces, the billing picks up again. So at the launch of the program, our best guess was that students would not be hitting that 89 hours a month breaking point, and we decided to go with the auto stop running mode. And so after a couple of months, we decided to look at the data. Again, my pie charts are fighting me today. But what we found is that students averaged about 33 hours per month. So we were well below that break-even point on average. We also had about 7% of our students that were going over that point, that were using 90 hours or more in a month. And we even had a couple students that were in triple digits, that were using over 100 hours a month. This is powerful hardware. These are powerful applications. All of the students in this program are working professionals. This is an executive program. And so it raises the issue, is all of this usage academic usage? Many of our software licenses, the terms and conditions tell us that this software is to be used for academic purposes only. We don't really have a great way to enforce that. We're relying on the student's own, sort of personal honor code, but if they're using Tableau to produce some visualizations for a presentation at work on Monday morning, instead of using it for classwork, we don't have a technical way to stop that. So the first couple of months of the program, we had some growing pains. Again, new program, first time we're using workspaces in production, first time we're using workspaces as something that's required for the curriculum. And so the biggest problem we saw in the beginning was that the workspaces client would occasionally refuse to connect. Students had it installed properly, their credentials were correct, they would attempt to log on, and workspaces would just tell them unable to connect. We mostly saw this issue when the entire class was trying to connect at the same time. So these students have online classes via Zoom every Tuesday and Thursday evening at 7 o'clock p.m. And what we saw is that some students would be unable to connect at that time. Now in client services and help desk, we always assume that everything is the user's problem, the user's fault, they must be doing something wrong. And this behavior gets reinforced when you have the same 5 or 6 people saying, well, I can't connect to workspaces, but the rest of the class and the faculty member is in just fine. We started to think, well, it's something on the user's device. Their Wi-Fi at home isn't robust enough to support what we're doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But these users told us that, at other times, non-class times, they were able to connect just fine. So we developed a theory that maybe the always-on running mode would be a solution. Maybe auto-stop was causing problems, corrupting the VMs, causing issues with our VMs. So even though it had some financial implications, we moved all of our workspaces to the always-on running mode. So this pleased students and faculty in one dimension. Login times were much faster. Again, the machine's always running. So as soon as they log in, they get to their desktop within seconds, which is great. But again, we had this issue where some workspaces, and it tended to be the same 5, 6, 7 students, were unable to connect. So AWS support worked with us, and eventually we got to this point where we figured out that there was an internal limit on the number of power workspaces that could be launched at any one time. The limit was technically 20. AWS explained to us that that was really more of a soft cushion. We'd certainly had more than 20 workspaces up and running at one time, but we'd never had 40. 33, 34, 35 seemed to be where we hit our cap. We were seeing the same students report issues because it's the same 5 or 6 students that tend to show up late for class every Tuesday and Thursday. So, there are some students that if it's a 7 o'clock class, are going to be firing up their workspace at 6:58, 7:01, 7:03, and those tended to be the students that, tried to get in when we had hit this workspaces cap. Once the problem was identified, AWS was super quick to remove that cushion, and from then on, there were no issues having all 40 of our students logged on at the same time. But this discussion then led us to a couple of refinements. So, after that cap was removed, we dropped back down to the auto-stop running mode so that the machines were shutting themselves down after an hour of idle time. And so the login times were still a little bit slow. And again, it's most prevalent when all the students are sitting down for class, either an online session or an in-person session. The faculty member is waiting, like, go ahead and fire up workspaces and open Tableau. And it's not a long time, but it's maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes while the faculty member is standing up there sort of impatiently tapping his foot. So we developed this CloudWatch rule in conjunction with Amazon to say, look, we know that for our Zoom classes, for our online classes, students are sitting down every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 o'clock p.m. They're going to be firing up their workspaces every Tuesday, every Thursday at 7 o'clock p.m. Why don't we just develop a rule that auto-launches all of these workspaces ahead of time, say at 6:40 p.m. And if you go back to the idea of, this is a physical computer lab replacement, this is equivalent to going into a computer lab, right, and walking down the rows and pushing the on button on every single workstation. That's in effect what we're doing with this CloudWatch rule. We're firing up the machines at 6:40 in advance of a 7 o'clock class. The students open their client, the machine is already turned on, they log in and they get to their desktop in about 3 or 4 seconds. This change made the students much happier. We also saw an issue where we'd have workspaces that would fall into an unhealthy status. For those of you familiar with the AWS Workspaces console, you want to look at your workspaces and see either they're stopped, they're shut down, or they're started, that nice green word that tells you they're up and running. You don't want to see the orange unhealthy status. And we had some students repeatedly get into this unhealthy status. We think, because they were shutting down the client improperly, because they had a break in their network connection, because their machine ran out of battery and they didn't have it plugged into the wall. There was some sort of non-graceful shutdown of the Workspaces client happening, which put the workspace itself into an unhealthy status. So again, working with AWS support, we came up with a simple solution. We just developed a rule that watches for any machines in the MSBA group that are in an unhealthy status. If it finds one, it reboots it. Problem solved. We run this every 2 hours as sort of a balance between trying to catch the machines when they're unhealthy, but not necessarily paying for hourly usage that we're not using. But this could easily run, every 15 minutes, every 5 minutes, every 1 minute. These are the kind of, growing pains that, again, first year of the program, these things are not wholly unexpected. I mean, I'm not going to say that there weren't some frustrations at times, but it's a new program, curriculum still under development, using a service that we'd not used as a mission-critical service in the past. And AWS has been a great partner for us in that and sort of helping us refine these issues. In a lot of ways, the first year of this program has really been even though it's in production, has been somewhat of a beta test. And we're going to move forward with this and kind of figure out, how to refine this process and smooth out some of these bumps in the road for future classes. So I'm going to turn this back over to Brian, who's going to take us through what our next steps are.
Thanks, Eric. So oddly enough, we actually learned some things from this 18-month experiment. And we'll pass those on because this is where we had some problems. So first and foremost, we wanted these workspaces to act as if they were on UVA grounds. We wanted them to be on our domain. We wanted them to have access to SQL servers and other resources and file servers. So as a result, we needed robust network tunnels from us to the AWS cloud. That was apparently a Herculean task that actually set us back a number of months to set up a stable, robust double VPN network so that we could use our workspaces as if they were sitting in Charlottesville. The second lesson we're still doing is talk to the faculty. Despite having all these capabilities and all the software, we still have faculty going around workspaces and taking class time to install things locally. An extreme case of that is a faculty member buying 60 terabyte flash drives to distribute data sets. The conversation, we got those returned, but we could have put that on a network drive and saved a lot of fuss. So the faculty are very used to how they teach, and WorkSpaces provides a huge new pedagogy for them and a very different approach. And so talking to the faculty early and letting them know what the capabilities are, we failed in some ways, and this year we're trying very hard to make sure the faculty are aware of what's possible on WorkSpaces. Eric touched on working with AWS. We talked about our usage. We never described our exact model. We never said we were going to have all of our students log on at class time and then log off. And so we ran into some problems with that. It's very important to involve your AWS team early and talk about just exactly how you plan to use these things. And then ultimately, we're moving from a CapEx to an OpEx here, and it doesn't necessarily save money. It certainly gives us a lot more capabilities to do things that we could not do. But from a pure hardware perspective, if you depreciate hardware, you might not be saving money. And that's important to let your financial folks know that this isn't some sort of panacea that's going to solve all your financial problems. So for us, our next step, we are deploying this in a wider model for a lot of our graduate programs that need access to Windows-specific software. As I mentioned, most of our students at this point are coming in with Macs. And so when we ask them to do assignments with Visio or Project or other Windows-specific software, they can't access it. And so we're trying to make their life easier. We're looking at AppStream. We're looking at WorkSpaces for that as a possibility. In addition, UMUC touts this, the ability for a faculty member to be working at their desk in their office and then go to the classroom and log into WorkSpace and having the same exact environment. It means you can set up class examples in your office and then just log in and you have the same thing. Currently, we have faculty that either carry their laptops in some cases or actually log into the classroom PC and redo a lot of work and waste some time at the beginning of class, which is valuable time. So UMUC also taught us about persistent desktops. Our physical computing labs get re-imaged every semester, and so students lose access to software, which is unfair. And so we want to make sure that they have a workspace throughout their entire career at McIntyre. And so if they learned how to use the software in their first semester, we want to make sure that that is available to them on day 700 of their program. We are hoping, we are pressing, we are wishing for a pooled model for workspaces. So we have 700 undergraduate students. We might only need 50 or 100 concurrent usage, based on how the fluctuation goes in our classes and when people are using physical computer labs. And so I'm looking at you, Andrew, on this one. But right now, workspaces are tied to an individual. So when we provision workspaces, they're Joe Smith, Jane Smith. If we could pool those workspaces, then we could use them as a real lab model, which would save us a lot of money and make this available to a wider swath of our students. And then ultimately, Eric touched on this a little bit, but we have a new capital project, new facility coming up, and we're rethinking how we design computer labs. We know that the students love the seating. They love the ability to work in groups. They love big displays. And so we're thinking about how to do this with workspaces and BYOD instead of just rows and rows of PCs that we're going to have to maintain and update every 3 or 4 years. So all of this was actually published earlier in the EDUCAUSE review. That article is much more in-depth on some of the analytics we did around how people were using it. But if you're interested, there is a short link there. I think these slides are available if you want to read more about our project and what we found on the research side. And at this point, we have about 11 minutes left. And I want to say thank you, and we'll open it up for questions.
So at this point, we'll open up for any questions. Not just, that's just a wave, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. Did you consider direct connect, even though there's a charge for the direct fiber connection between your school and AWS?
The university is actually working on it now. So we will have one direct connect and one VPN as a backup. That is our ultimate network infrastructure. Currently, we're working on VPN.
Hi there, thank you for the talk. Can you talk a little bit about integration with other enterprise systems like learning management systems, Banner, the kinds of things that the university would use?
Sure. So from a WorkSpaces perspective, very AD-centric in terms of its integration. So AD really is the source of truth for your user identities. So to the extent that your learning management systems integrate with your AD, you have a nice integration model there. A service we didn't talk a lot about today, which is also available when you're really talking about very specific curated app use cases, streaming applications to a user, which is AppStream 2.0. AppStream 2.0 does provide additional extensibility and learning management system integration, so we do offer some open source LTE plugins or LTI plugins for Moodle, Canvas, Blackboard, LMS, and so whether it's WorkSpaces for a full desktop experience or AppStream if you're really focusing on specific applications that you'd like to provide to a student, in kind of a linear sort of coursework flow through an LMS, AppStream is definitely a service that you can use as well as WorkSpaces to provide that type of experience.
Thank you for your talk, very interesting. I had a question about how you are managing your data science application baseline. Are you using the WorkSpaces application manager or are you rolling your own?
So we are not. I mean, we're familiar with the application manager, but we are right now using WorkSpaces the same way that we handle our physical computer labs, in that we're consulting with the faculty. We're building a master image, which includes every application and some specific application configurations in some cases, the licensing, and then just basically cloning that image to the WorkSpaces.
Hey, how are you guys making sure that your CAS and OS are up to date? I mean, compliance every quarter or every month?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Hey, how are you guys keeping your CAS and OS up to date so you're meeting compliance every month or every quarter?
So we have built these images kind of on a yearly basis, and we are letting the students run with it through the academic year. Windows updates are still turned on, and because these machines participate in our domain, our group policies for lab machines still controls Windows updating. We will then, this summer we'll be rebuilding, for example, like we'll move, everything to an 1809 Windows 10 baseline image and then go from there.
And you use the case.
We are also using, so in our environment, we're using the case systems management appliance by Quest. And so we can push out patches, we can push out scripts when we had some software that, the licensing term doesn't line up exactly with the August to August term of the MSBA program specifically. So we can generate a script in case all these machines run a case user agent on it. We can push out a script that relicenses, Tableau, let's say.
And just to add to that, WorkSpaces does provide sort of out-of-the-box automated updates. So Amazon, of course, from a management plane, we do provide updates to our drivers and agents that run on the workspace. But we also enable, traditional Windows automatic updates. But as I kind of mentioned at the early part of at least my portion of the presentation, we expect to work with IT organizations that have a pretty well-established client management model for Windows desktops. And our objective is to help customers and meet them where they are with respect to those models. So whether it's SCCM, group policy, tight domain integration and other services, we don't expect a customer to totally reinvent their client management model for WorkSpaces when it's really going to be introduced into an existing sort of management paradigm. So we want to meet customers where they are, let them utilize their own solutions, and when they do that, they can sort of defeature our own management and scheduled updates in favor of whatever models they'd like to adopt.
I was wondering what the user experience is like since you're using a remote system, and what's it like for, say, dragging and dropping and stuff like that?
So our experience with it has been that it's perfectly smooth. I mean, we did have that little issue in the beginning with some slower logon times, some inability to connect. When students are connected to it, it functions exactly like a Windows desktop and exactly like you'd expect it to. We've not seen any latency issues, any lagging issues, any drag and drop sort of stuttering across the screen, unless the students haven't told us about it, and I'm pretty sure the students would tell us about it.
They're good at telling us things.
Okay.
Hey, could you speak about what approach you took to your Active Directory architecture, infrastructure, extending, synchronizing? What did you do with your AD management?
You want to talk about the AD setup a little bit?
You know more about them.
I mean, we need our enterprise systems guys here for that. So our Active Directory, McIntyre does a lot of things independently of the university. We've got an in-house help desk. We've got an in-house Active Directory, and so we worked closely with our internal enterprise systems teams as well as the university's central IT to set that up. We are not the networking guys, so I can't do a deep dive on that and give you details on that.
Just to talk kind of broadly about WorkSpaces architecture, as I mentioned, obviously there is a tight integration with AD, but we do work with customers' existing AD infrastructure. So if you have on-premises AD, whether you have extended your AD to AWS, or if you're using our managed AD services within AWS, we have connectors that kind of cover all those different scenarios. And so you have essentially a way of configuring a directory service. Could be just a connector. It could be a full-fledged managed service that will essentially broker the connection to your AD. We typically recommend customers do things like set up separate OUs within their AD hierarchy so that you can apply custom group policies that may be just for workspaces, and obviously also inherit existing group policies that may already be in place for your lab PC environments or other use cases. And so pretty flexible when it comes to AD, and obviously many customers will have multiple configurations that they may need to maintain within a single AWS account, multiple AWS accounts, and so it's by no means a one-size-fits-all. Obviously, there's a few kind of key requirements, but beyond that, customers will kind of think about how to conform workspaces into their existing AD structure, and there's a lot of flexibility around that.
Hi, yeah, I was wondering, so you guys set up workspaces to provide connectivity options for your end students, but I was curious how you took those workspaces and connected into your on-premises environment, like you had data storage and other things on your network. So you got network limitations with VPN connections. I was curious how much of that data you pulled out. Were people doing more local compute within their workspaces, or were you like pulling that data into other cloud services, building out some kind of bigger data analysis environment, and kind of what that looked like?
Yeah, so it's way more on workspace compute. So they're analyzing data sets, they're using Tableau, they're using the software packages. They can, to your point, they are VPN connections, they are limiting connections, so it's going to be slower than if they were sitting in our resource. We did look at moving certain things to Amazon to eliminate that, but we found that at least in our first year of the program, it wasn't necessary. But that's the answer. If it gets there, then we'll move things up to be adjacent.
Hi. So you guys mentioned that right now you're mostly doing like one-to-one workspaces, looking at sort of like a pooled model. What's the time frame look like for, spinning up those VMs or workspaces, to kind of like scale that up? Say you got, a class of 20 students, but then maybe you need to scale it up to 100 or something. And, how long does that take to kind of provision those workspaces?
So right now working with the one-to-one model, I mean, it takes, about 5 minutes to spin up a new workspace, and you can either do it manually via the console, or you can do it via the AWS command line interface. You can point to a JSON file that that has your user IDs, for example. But it's very quick. We for the MSBA program, on the launch day, I think we had all but one student. So we weren't doing a lot of bulk creation after the launch of the program. We were doing a little bit of bulk deletion. We had some students, just like any program, sort of come to the first day and realize, hey, this isn't for me. I'm out of here. And so, we did a little bit of that, but I, and Andrew can probably speak to this a little bit more, but, once you're working with a master bundle in workspaces, it's simple to spin up, as many as you need very quickly.
Yeah, and just to add to that, most customers, when you look at the console experience, today the console experience is really built for kind of ad hoc creation of desktops. We can do about 20 at a time, and it takes anywhere from 5 to 15 to 20 minutes to spin up a desktop, one-to-one. But with our APIs and the way that we can kind of extend that, a lot of our customers will start with basic automation, using a text file that's maybe pulled from a system of record to say this is the list of students that are enrolled in a course or a program, and to take action automatically based on that. Customers will do basic things like, hey, I'm going to put a user into an AD group, and that group will then provision the workspace with some automation. As you can imagine, with our extensible APIs, everything we talk about can be done point and click, but can also be fully automated and fully integrated. And our goal certainly is look at where you are in terms of your AWS and your cloud maturity, and look at how fast you want to go. Certainly when you get into the scale of hundreds or thousands of users, or even tens of thousands of users, the administrative experience in the console will not meet the need. You really want to fully automate at that point. But the good news is our APIs will support that. And so with our customers that have really utilized our APIs as a primary means of provisioning or even deprovisioning, they're doing hundreds an hour in terms of provisioning. Once provisioned, those resources are today one-to-one. They will live indefinitely until you decide you no longer need them, in which case you just hit terminate and they go away. But it's a great experience for students and also for other end users, because while it's there, they've got a persistent C drive, they've got a persistent D drive, they can move their data sets in, they can configure it, they can run it, they can walk away, it goes to sleep, it wakes up when they're ready. We can orchestrate the kind of automatic wake up for that so that it's kind of ready to go at scheduled times. And it's where they left off, their applications are where they left off, their data is where they left off. So it's a highly productive experience for students.
You mentioned the one, that you had a little trouble with the faculty and communication early on. In an ideal sense of talking to your faculty, would you invite them to think beyond their current teaching methods, because this can very much change the classroom experience? Or do you find that they really have to live it first, and then they come to you later and say, hey, now I need this during classroom time, or I want extra things because it changes what they can do?
It was kind of you to say a little bit of an issue with the faculty. That's probably the biggest issue. And part of that is that this is a brand new program, so the pedagogy was in flux. So we saw the software tools and some of the courses, objectives change quite a bit throughout the course of the program. They're still changing right now, actually. And secondarily, we didn't take the time to meet with the key faculty ahead of time and really dive into WorkSpaces and show them what it was capable of. We kind of made some assumptions that they would get it very quickly, and they did not. And so that is our error, and we this year, for next year's class, we have a sit down with every faculty member in the program to just show what's possible and see how that clicks in terms of getting less time, wasting less time in class, because for the executives, that time is worth many, many thousands of dollars an hour. So we don't want to waste any of that time if at all possible.
Hi, I actually wear two hats. I work for a university in Maryland, and I also work for NASA at the same time. And on one side with the university, we would like to see the pooled connections for WorkSpaces also. But for the NASA side, most of our NASA customers are using Windows laptops. They prefer to log in to our machines, which are mainly Linux, with their Windows laptops. So typically on a Linux instance, I'll run Tiger VPC and XRDP so that they can actually remote in with the remote desktop protocol from Windows, very similar to what they're used to getting into other things. And usually it's a GNOME desktop that they're logging straight into. Are there any tools in AWS to do a similar function to WorkSpaces for these sorts of things? Because most of what we're doing are sort of training lab sort of things at this point in sandbox and test spaces. They're not full-blown applications on servers that are actually running functions.
So just to understand the question, was the question around different ways of connecting, or was the question around specific application use cases?
So what we would like to see is sort of a workspaces for GNOME.
Okay. Okay.
For
Well,
Linux
so
laptops.
yeah, so I think in terms of that kind of a desktop experience with GNOME, we're right now, I think the model for workspaces continues to be, kind of a fully baked kind of desktop experience. To Brian's point, we are looking at opportunities to introduce different ways of delivering that. So rather than a persistent one-to-one, maybe more of a pooled, non-persistent type of model that, really will be potentially more aligned to scenarios where you have a lot of users that potentially will access, but maybe not necessarily everyone can concurrently logged in. It's a different cost structure, a different user experience, but we definitely want to help unlock those use cases. And today we will utilize within Workspaces a PC over IP connection model. So whether it's a Windows-based PC, there's now Linux-based client applications. So I think regardless of the client type, if there's lots of different ways to connect. And actually customers are sometimes surprised by the fact that they can also, if they have private connectivity to the resource within their AWS VPC, they can actually RDP in and they can actually utilize other extensions. And so that includes, desktops that are running potentially on a Linux platform. So if you have private connectivity to the Workspaces environment, it's just an instance. So you have the ability to network into that and use alternatives to PC over IP if that's not exactly meeting your needs. So SSH, RDP, and other connections are available. Last question.
Okay, so I just wanted to know, the workspaces and the local machines, like, are there links, can you link them, like, can you copy across maybe from the workspace? Let's say you had an Excel file that you wanted to copy from your local machine to the workspace. Can you do that?
So the workspaces today are designed to isolate data and access from the local device to the desktop. And so today the ability to kind of share directly, files between the client device and the desktop doesn't exist. So customers will typically utilize cloud storage as a means of doing that, as well as network storage. But that is something that we are investigating. And I would also say our AppStream solution is potentially a solution that can do that. It delivers the application over a browser, and there is a file explorer kind of option where you can drag and drop files into the experience. And so there are a few different ways we can approach that depending on the use case. Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And don't forget your surveys. Thanks.